Hey guys, this is Justin from the Arsene Coffee YouTube channel and Facebook pages. As always, if you haven't had a chance to do so, please consider supporting us by subscribing to the YouTube channel and signing up to the multiple Facebook pages. So today, just a quick revisiting, if I may say, of the HG P408 project. So as you guys may or may not remember, I was changing the motor, which is done. So that's replaced by a 550 can from Holmes Hobby. The servo, the ESC. So I've already done that. I've just separated it from the chassis. At this point, it's just easier to work on it this way. And I just quickly wanted to give you a few pointers of things that worked well and things that didn't work so well for me for this chassis. So I'd say first and foremost, before you start looking into this, definitely have a good look at the manual. I mean, it may sound very basic, but we all know that most of us skip this step. You've done it one chassis, two chassis, and at the end of the day, you think not that you know it all, but it seems redundant. It's definitely not the case with this guy. As you can see, everything's an extremely tight fit. There's a bunch of different screws. Some are Phillips, some are threaded differently, and some of them go side by side. So you can definitely put them back in the wrong place. But a couple pointers. So first and foremost, I don't know about the other HG products, but there's no point in going into the transmission. I was warned that it was already properly greased. I just wanted to check it out for myself to let you guys know. It really looks like actually red and tacky grease from Lucas Oil. It was full of it, so that was really nice to see. Something interesting that I noticed, there's a planetary gear, or reduction gear rather, between the motor and the transmission. So it's like this little thing right here actually. And that seems to have plastic gears. Well greased. I don't see this as being an issue, but just something that I noticed. Something that they've done really well, the motor plate, which is this thing right there. This is the motor plate. I'll grab one of these here. Is basically sandwiched between the transmission or the planetary gear and the motor. So there's really no chance for your motor bracket, I guess, from moving around like what's happened to me with the RC Run, the Run 80 chassis. So basically the bracket was moving around within the transmission. So, and it caused the transmission to slip a little bit. The first thing that you want to do after you've removed the body, and I've talked a little bit about that in a previous video, if you want to get into the transmission, unscrew the exhaust pipe. You can leave it in place, but you have to make sure that it moves. You have some wiggle room. And as a matter of fact, that thing was there all along as I was working on the transmission. It's just that I basically removed what was it? This part there from underneath, so that you have access to the shaft, as well as this part here from underneath as well. Also, take a bunch of pictures. For instance, the servo horn is at a 90-degree angle, specifically in that direction. Take a picture of that. That way you won't have to worry about that in the future as you reassemble that. The shaft was, in terms of order of things, you want to you can basically put the transmission or reattach the transmission right after you've reconnected this shaft there, and the front shaft can be installed or reinstalled with the transmission in place. So you don't. That way you can have one thing properly, set in place, and then you don't need to have everything moving around as you're working on other parts of the truck. So essentially, just to reiterate, this part here you need the transmission to move around. And basically those screws, boom, boom, and the other one on the other side to be unscrewed. but that part there you can install for the with the transmission already screwed back on. Now, the new challenge that I'm facing has to do with the servo. So that's a new servo. That's not the original one. And as you can see, it's in poor shape. That's because I had to Dremel the life out of it to get it to fit. And if you were to compare the, it's too bad I don't have it with me, the original servo with this, they almost look exactly the same in terms of size and shape. But what I noticed, the bracket here has a tiny ledge. It's very difficult to see, even now with your own eyes. There's a tiny ledge right here, and a tiny ledge, actually just there, here. I don't know if it's a defect, a fabrication defect. I don't know if it's supposed to be that way, but basically it prevents anything that is not like, a quarter of a millimeter of the same size of the original servo to properly fit. So basically I had to Dremel, the servo, between, I could have, Dremeled this instead, but it was easier just to Dremel this because it's a square. And I wasn't too sure at first that this was the issue. I figured it out as I was seeing the rubbing marks here. So that's really annoying, and that's metal, by the way. It's really annoying, and in order to do that, I would have had to, unscrew maybe 5-6 screws, and that little bracket here holds the shaft that I had just reinstalled, so I wasn't too keen on doing that. The other issue, which has to do with the servo again, the steering rather, this thing there. This is metal. This I don't even know what that is. It's, I guess, the equivalent of a servo horn, but there is another servo horn, and it's a plastic one. It's sitting right here. As a matter of fact, this truck has 2 servo horns. There's another one on the other side. You can't see it, but it's basically attached to the panhard. This is an absolute nightmare to put on, and as you can see, it's not fully jammed into place. I don't even know if I'll be able to do so. I've put the entire weight of my body, I'm almost 200 pounds, to just to push it there. I use tools. I was at the point where I feared that I'd be, breaking that servo. So I kind of stopped. I'll see if it works this way. Hopefully it does. I'll probably order an extra set of those to have some whenever that servo dies, because I've heard that because basically that servo sits at an angle, very similarly to the new cross-country chassis from RC 4-wheel drive, and apparently that causes servos, no matter the power, because this one's obviously much more powerful than the original one, to overheat. So I'm already expecting going through servos. Now, essentially, where I'm going with that, somehow I'm unable to jam this onto the I guess the gear. It seems to have the same number of teeth. I kind of hope so. It seems to, and I think it does, because removing this from the original servo was a pain in the rear end in the first place. So it's not just this one. Just removing it from the other servo was hard. But anyways, so it's just I don't know why they decide to come up with these weird systems. They could have done that a lot more simple. And so you have a plastic servo horn that's paired to a metal secondary servo horn, whatever that is. I just don't understand the logic behind this. If you're going to do plastic on metal, maybe do metal on metal instead. And, if you're going to, come up with a steering system, make sure that, it's a universal system that we can buy and fix. Especially if this thing is supposed to be considered hobby grade being, the concept that you can fix anything that breaks. It's, oh my god, this thing it's frustrating to work on, to be honest. It's more frustrating than interesting at this point. And then you know, I'm soon going to be tackling the electronics. So that's going to be another interesting part. If depending on how things go, I may replace the entire system altogether with my own receiver, my own light kit, etc. Because the HG stuff, from what I've heard, doesn't seem to be compatible with well, your run-of-the-mill systems in general, HG electronics. So that's that. That's where I'm at with this. You know, fighting with that servo. Finally, I think it properly fits in now. Let's see. Does it? Yeah, it does. So that's fine. So yeah. But I mean, it's well built. Don't get me wrong. With the exception of the electronics, that's crap. But it's just very difficult to work on. And you know, if you guys buy this and with the intention of working on it, well, just make sure it's not your first. It's not your first rig. If you buy it as your first rig, knowing that you know everything breaks at some point, any parts of the electronics, etc. Just know that it's not your TRX4. It's not your your SCX10 2 3. It's an HG, and they have their quirks, and that's one of them. Quality controls are very different. There's a whole bunch of parts, like a ton of parts, and the logic behind how the assembly is done is very different. You can definitely tell, and that's something that I was talking in another video. You can tell that these kits are not put together for people to build them as kits, if that makes any sense. But that's a shame because, you know, I think they know by now that that's what people do, and either way, a servo is going to break, a motor is going to die. So they should really, I think, you know, try to standardize their approach a little more. So yeah, just wanted to share that with you guys. That's where I'm at. Still working on the GC4. I'm almost done the paint on that. I think it turned out okay. Yeah, just playing with a whole bunch of projects, which you'll get to see in a near future. All right, plastic horn, but that's fine. That's a tiny. I actually do think that the shifting mechanism for the transmission is a good one. It's it's safe with that rebound thing there. That it basically enables the plastic horn to do its thing without putting too much stress on it. Yeah, I mean, it's not all bad. It's just a lot of quirks, and I'm full of aluminum dust now, so I'm gonna go change clothes. All right, guys. See you at the next video.